beneath 6,000 feet of Himalayan stone in a facility that no satellite could see and no signal could penetrate, Admiral Garrett. Thorne sat alone in the dark. He was 64 years old, silver hair, scarred hands, eyes that spoke of nights without sleep and decisions that haunted him still. On the desk before him lay a single sheet of paper. The edges were worn soft from years of handling. Sarah's handwriting, the last words his wife had written before the cancer took her voice, then her breath, then everything else. My love, when you read this, I'll be gone. Don't grieve too long. The work needs you. Our daughter needs you. The world needs you, though it doesn't know it yet. When they come, and they will come, don't let them take our world like they took your father. I'll be watching. I believe in you. Sarah. The door to his office opened without a knock. Only one man had that privilege. Dr. Ellison Cross was 62, rail-thin with eyes that burned with fierce intelligence. He had been decoding alien transmissions since 1986. His hands never stopped moving, fingers constantly tapping rhythms only he could hear. He carried a data tablet. His face was pale. Garrett. That single word carried the weight of a collapsing star. Thorne stood. His joints protested. Show me. Cross set the tablet on the desk. The screen displayed text in Dominion Common Tongue, a language that sounded like broken glass scraping across metal. Beneath it, Cross's translation glowed in clean white letters. Deployment order, classification standard harvest. Target species 4217. Local designation humans. Location Sol System Outer Rim. Fleet composition 10,000 warships under Fleet Commander Draven Kess. Estimated resistance 0. Expected operation duration 3 rotations. Authorization Grand Archon Vex Morian Galactic Dominion Council. The room was very quiet. Thorne's voice came out flat. When 40 standard rotations, 37 days Earth time, they're already en route. Cross's fingers drummed against the desk. Tap, tap, tap. Garrett, 10,000 ships. That's extermination protocol. I know what it is. Do you dodge it? Because I've been running the numbers for 3 hours and I can't find a scenario where we... Ellison. The use of Cross's given name stopped him mid-sentence. Thorne only used it when the moment demanded absolute clarity. How long have you known me? 42 years next month. Have I ever asked you to do something without a reason? Cross's jaw tightened. No. Then trust me now. Thorne moved to the window screen that displayed the outside world in real time. Snow, stars, the clean darkness of a world that had no idea its death warrant had just been signed. Activate Protocol Prometheus. The words fell into the room like stones into a well. Cross's face went very still. Garrett, that's everything. Every asset, every resource, every card we've been holding. I'm aware. If you're wrong, I'm not wrong. Thorne turned back to face his oldest friend. They're coming. Not to negotiate, not to trade, to harvest. That's their word for it, Ellison. Harvest, like we're wheat, like we're livestock. So we fight. No. Thorne's smile held no warmth. We've been fighting. Every scientist who sacrificed their career to work in secret. Every engineer who built weapons they could never claim credit for. Every soldier who trained for a war that might never come. Every family that buried someone who officially died in an accident when the truth was they died building our only chance at survival. He walked to the largest screen. It showed the orbit of Neptune and beyond it, the dark between stars where enemies traveled faster than light. We were never going to stop them from coming, Ellison. The moment my father was taken, the moment your mother's village disappeared in South Korea in '67, the moment any of the other 300 incidents happened, it was already too late. They marked us. They cataloged us. They decided we were worth harvesting. Then what have we been doing all this time? Thorne's voice dropped to something cold and final. Making sure they regret it. Cross stared at him for a long moment. Then slowly he nodded. I'll activate the network. It'll take 6 hours to bring everything online. Make it 4. Garrett. 4 hours, Ellison. I want them to see what we've built before they're close enough to run. Thorne's hand rested on Sarah's letter. And I want to send them a message first. Cross's eyebrows rose. A message? You mean communication diplomacy? No, I mean a warning. They won't listen. I know, but I want the record to show we gave them the chance. Thorne's eyes were the color of winter ice. Get me a secure uplink. Direct transmission to their fleet's encrypted military frequency. Cross's fingers stopped their constant tapping. Garrett, that frequency is supposed to be unbreakable. If we broadcast on it, we reveal that we've been listening. We lose our intelligence advantage. We lose it anyway the moment they arrive and realize we knew they were coming. This way we control the revelation. We make them afraid before the first shot is fired. You think fear will stop them? No. Thorne sat down at his desk. He pulled up a blank text interface on his screen. But it might make them hesitate, and hesitation creates openings. His fingers hovered over the keyboard. What do you say to the executioner who comes for your world? Thorne began to type. The message was short, every word chosen with the precision of a surgeon's blade. To the commanders of the Dominion Harvester Fleet designated for Sol System, we are aware of your mission. We are aware of your fleet composition. We are aware of your staging coordinates and your rules of engagement. We have been aware for some time. This message is not a plea. It is not a negotiation. It is a courtesy. Do not come here. You will not harvest us. You will not enslave us. You will simply cease to exist. This is your only warning. The Void Wardens of Earth. Cross read it over his shoulder. Jesus, Garrett. That's not a warning. That's a declaration of war. They declared war when they took my father. We're just RSVP Singh. Thorne's finger hovered over the send key. One more thing. I need you to route this through Agent Caldwell's network. Marin YB, Cross's eyes widened. You want to leak it? I want the entire galaxy to hear it. Garrett, if you broadcast this on open channels, you won't just be warning the fleet. You'll be announcing Earth's existence to every species in Dominion space. Slave races, conquered worlds, species that might see us as a threat or an opportunity or hope. Thorne pressed send. The message launched into the dark at the speed of light, racing towards ships that were 37 days away from making his species extinct. I want them to know someone finally said no. Cross was quiet for a moment. Then your mother would be proud, terrified but proud. Sarah would be too. Thorne stood. Come on, I need to brief the council. And Ellison. Yeah, call my daughter. Tell her to get to the retribution and prepare for deployment. Full stealth protocols. Cross's face showed something that might have been grief. You're sending Cassandra out there. I'm giving her the command she trained 20 years for. Thorne's voice didn't waver, but his hand trembled as he picked up Sarah's letter and folded it carefully into his jacket pocket right over his heart. If this goes wrong, I need to know someone who understands what we built will survive to use it. 6,000 light-years away on a space station that orbited a world whose name translated to Convergence of the Broken. A woman who called herself Marin Caldwell sat in a room the size of a closet and listened to impossible words. She was 43 years old. Her official records said she was a mineral trader specializing in rare earths. Her tax filings were boring. Her shipping manifests were legitimate. Her business partner was a Hurix crystal merchant who thought humans were an amusing curiosity, harmless and simple. None of it was true. Agent Marin Caldwell had been deep cover for 11 years. She spoke 7 languages, 3 of them alien. She had killed 4 people in the line of duty and saved approximately 2 million she would never meet. She missed coffee, she missed rain, she missed her husband. Thomas had been a weapons engineer for the Void Wardens. He had died 13 years ago when a prototype antimatter containment system failed during testing. The official story said industrial accident. The truth was he had volunteered to test the device, knowing it might kill him, because if it worked, it would give Earth's stealth fleet the power to fight ships 10 times their size. It had worked. He had died. And Marin had volunteered for the most dangerous assignment the Wardens had ever conceived because she needed his death to mean something. Now she sat in her tiny room on Station Orin 4, surrounded by equipment that looked like standard commercial communication gear, but was actually an intelligence hub powerful enough to intercept, decode, and rebroadcast signals across half the galaxy. The message from Admiral Thorne had arrived 30 seconds ago. Along with it came a second transmission. Encrypted. Personal. 2 words make noise. Marin's hands moved across the console with practiced efficiency. She had spent 11 years planning listening devices in this station's communication infrastructure. Tiny things no bigger than grains of sand hidden in relay nodes and signal boosters. Hundreds of them. All dormant, all waiting for a single activation code. She entered it now. The message that had been meant for a Dominion harvester fleet suddenly copied itself across the station's entire network. It bounced from relay to relay, multiplying like a virus. Within seconds, it hit the main communication hub. Within minutes, it was broadcasting on every frequency the station touched. Station Orin 4 was a nexus point. Signals that passed through it reached hundreds of worlds. The message spread like fire in dry grass. On the mining world of Wrath Prime, where stone-skinned giants had broken their backs in darkness for 800 years, the words echoed through stolen speakers in the deep tunnels. Karn heard them while standing in a cavern 3 miles beneath the surface. He was massive even by the standards of his species. 8 feet tall, shoulders like boulders, hands that could crush steel. His skin had the texture of granite and the color of old storms. Scars crossed his body in patterns that told stories of punishment and resistance. He was 243 years old. His species aged slowly. His people had been slaves longer than most civilizations had existed. 20 years ago, Dominion overseers had beaten his son to death in front of him for refusing to work in a collapsed mine shaft. Karn had been forced to watch chains holding him back while his child died screaming. The Wrath were not permitted to bury their dead. Bodies were processed for useful minerals. Karn had led a secret resistance ever since. Small acts of sabotage, hidden weapons, training sessions in abandoned tunnels where younger Wrath learned how to fight. It was hopeless. Everyone knew it. The Dominion had broken species more powerful than theirs. But Karn continued anyway because the alternative was accepting that his son had died for nothing. Now he stood in a gathering of resistance leaders, 12 Wrath warriors who had lost everything and kept fighting anyway, and listened to a human voice speak words that no one had dared speak in living memory. You will simply cease to exist. The cavern was silent when the message ended. One of the younger warriors, a female named Thera, who had lost her daughter to the processing plant, spoke first. It's a bluff. It must be. No species threatens the Dominion and survives. Perhaps. Karn's voice was like stone grinding against stone. Or perhaps they are too young to know they should be afraid. So we ignore it. Karn closed his enormous fist. Slowly, deliberately, the gesture of a man making a choice that might destroy him. No, we prepare. If the humans fight and win, the Dominion will pull forces from garrison worlds. If they fight and lose, the confusion might create opportunities. Either way, something is happening that has not happened in 800 years. What? Thera asked. Karn's eyes, the color of deep earth, held something that looked almost like hope. Someone is fighting back. 6,000 light years in a different direction in the archive chambers of Threx Prime, a small figure hunched over a data terminal and felt her world crumbling. Scribe Lyra was 4 feet tall with 4 arms and 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern across her narrow face. Her species, the Mary, had been conquered so long ago that no one remembered what their homeworld had looked like before the Dominion turned it into an agricultural processing center. She was 61 years old by Dominion standard. Her back curved from decades of bending over screens. Her eyes ached constantly. She lived in a room the size of a storage closet and ate recycled protein that tasted like sadness. She had been a scribe for the Galactic Dominion Council for 40 years. She kept records. She filed reports. She cataloged the deaths of civilizations with the same mechanical precision that others might use to organize tax returns. Once she had been a child, once she had parents, once her father had hidden her in a grain storage container while Dominion soldiers killed everyone else in their village. She had been 7 years old. She had listened to her mother scream. She had stayed hidden for 3 days before it was safe to emerge. That little girl had learned to be very quiet, very careful, and very good at her job. Because in the Dominion, the useful survived. Everyone else became resources. But tonight, something was different. Lyra sat in her archive room, a space no one else visited because it contained files too old to be relevant, and pulled up records that had been buried for 214 years. The original survey report for Species 4217. The file was marked with a classification level she had never seen before. Not just classified, suppressed. The kind of designation that meant someone powerful had wanted this information to disappear. She read it 3 times to make sure she understood. Survey Team Report Species 4217. Local Designation Humans. Planet Earth. Location Sol System. Recommendation. Permanent Avoidance. Classification. Apex Predator. Stage 2 Potential. Detailed Analysis. This species exhibits an anomalous pattern termed aggression adaptation loop. Unlike standard evolutionary development, humans demonstrate the capacity to deliberately modify their behavior, technology, and social structures in response to threats across single generations rather than millions of years. Every conflict in their recorded history has resulted in more sophisticated weapons. Every plague has produced stronger medicine. Every disaster has generated more resilient organizational systems. If allowed to continue, developing, this species will reach classification. Apex Predator Stage 3, within an estimated 200 to 300 standard rotations. Recommendation: do not engage, do not contact, Monitor from maximum safe distance. If engagement becomes unavoidable, commit overwhelming force immediately. Do not allow them time to adapt. Surveyor Keth Varun, date 214 rotations ago. At the bottom of the report, a single note in a different hand. Recommendation overruled. Species shows no current threat. Marked for standard harvest when technology reaches Class 2 threshold. Authorization, Archon Vex Morian. Lyra's four hands trembled. Vex had known. 200 years ago, Vex had read this report and ignored it. He had sent a fleet to harvest a species that his own surveyors had classified as too dangerous to approach. And now, tonight, she had intercepted the human message. The one that was spreading across the galaxy like a virus. The one that proved the surveyor had been right. She tried to send a priority alert to Fleet Commander Draven Kess, the man who would lead 10,000 ships to their doom in 37 days if someone didn't warn him. The system blocked her transmission. Authorization denied. Override code, Grand Archon Vex Morian. Lyra sat very still in the darkness of her archive room. Understanding crashed over her like a wave. Vex knew. He had always known. And he was sending them anyway. Why? The answer came to her slowly, terribly. Because Vex had built his entire career on the promise that the Dominion was invincible. That no species could threaten them. That conquest was inevitable and resistance was futile. If he admitted now that Earth was dangerous, he would have to explain why he had ignored the warning 200 years ago. He would have to admit error. And in the Dominion, admitting error was the same as admitting weakness. Weakness meant removal. So instead, he would send 10,000 ships and pray the surveyor had been wrong. And if the ships were destroyed, he would blame the commander. Say they had been incompetent, that the loss was an aberration. And he would send more ships, bigger fleets, until Earth was buried under sheer numbers, or until the Dominion bled itself dry, trying to break something that refused to break. Lyra's small hands shook as she copied the file to a private storage drive. She didn't know what she would do with it, didn't know who she could trust. But she knew with the certainty of someone who had spent a lifetime watching the powerful destroy the weak that this was about to become the worst mistake in Dominion history. And no one who mattered was listening. Back on Earth in the Himalayan facility that was beginning to wake from its long sleep, Admiral Garrett Thorne stood before a holographic display and watched his life's work come online. The room had filled with people, senior commanders, department heads, scientists who had spent decades building weapons that they prayed would never be used. All of them waiting for his words. Cassandra stood near the back. His daughter, 41 years old with Sarah's dark hair and his own pale eyes. She wore the black uniform of the Void Warden's stealth fleet, commander's insignia on her collar. She met his gaze across the room and gave him the smallest nod. "I'm ready," that nod said. "Don't ask me not to do this." Thorne had spent her entire childhood preparing her for this moment, teaching her strategy, training her in combat, making sure she understood that duty sometimes meant sacrifice. That freedom always had a price. Now that the moment had arrived, all he wanted was to tell her to run, to take the fastest ship they had and flee into deep space far from the battle that was coming. But he was her commander before he was her father, and she was too much like her mother to run anyway. He turned to face the room. "My father was taken by a Dominion survey team in 1964. He began, his voice carrying in the sudden silence. "My mother spent the rest of her life building something they wouldn't see coming. A shadow military, a secret fleet, a weapon that would only reveal itself when there was no other choice." He touched the controls. The holographic display shifted. Now it showed the entire solar system. And scattered through it like stars in the darkness, thousands of markers began to appear. Stealth ships hiding in the Kuiper Belt, weapon platforms disguised as asteroids, sensor grids that wrapped around the sun itself, drone factories hidden in the moons of Jupiter. Every asset the Void Wardens had built over 6 decades. The room was absolutely quiet. 4 hours ago, Thorne continued, we intercepted a Dominion deployment order. 10,000 warships are coming to harvest our world. They expect zero resistance. They expect this to take 3 days. He let that sink in. They don't know we've been listening. They don't know we've been preparing. They don't know that we turned our entire solar system into a weapon. They're going to learn. He moved to another control. A new image appeared. The message he had sent. The words that were now spreading across the galaxy. I sent them a warning, not because I thought they would listen, but because when this is over, I want the historical record to show that we gave them a chance, that we offered mercy before we offered violence. His eyes found Cassandra again, held her gaze. Some of you have children in the fleet. Some of you have partners, friends. People you love who will be in danger when the fighting starts. I understand that fear. I share it. But I also know something else. He straightened. The weight of command settled over him like armor. We didn't choose this fight, but we've been preparing for it for longer than most of you have been alive. Every calculation, every simulation, every war game we've run has led to this moment. And every single one of them showed us that we can win. Not easily, not without cost, but we can win. He gestured to the holographic display, the hidden fleet, the silent weapons, the infrastructure of humanity's last stand. When they arrive, they're going to be expecting primitives, chemical rockets, nuclear weapons, species that barely made it to their own moon. What they're going to find is something that has studied them for longer than most of their soldiers have been alive. Something that knows their tactics, their technology, their weaknesses. Something that has been designed from the ground up to do one thing. His voice dropped to something cold and final. Survive. The room erupted, not in cheers. The Void Wardens were too disciplined for that, but in a collective exhalation of breath, of tension releasing, of fear transforming into purpose. Cross appeared at his elbow. Fleet commanders are reporting ready status. All assets will be operational in 3 hours 40 minutes. Good. Start moving the stealth dreadnoughts into position. I want them in the Kuiper Belt before the Dominion fleet arrives. Maximum dispersion pattern. Done. Cross hesitated. Garrett, the message is spreading faster than we projected. We're picking up responses from at least 80 systems. Slave worlds. Conquered species. Some of them are hopeful. Let them hope. Hope is a weapon, too. And if we lose, Thorn thought of his father disappeared into an alien sky, his mother dying with secrets she couldn't share, his wife leaving him with instructions to finish what had started before he was born. Then we lose fighting, and maybe that's enough to inspire someone else to pick up where we failed. He turned to Cross. But we're not going to lose. How can you be sure? Because they think we're prey. Thorn's smile was the expression of a man who had spent a lifetime sharpening a blade. We're going to teach them otherwise. He dismissed the briefing. People scattered to their stations. The facility around him hummed with new energy. Systems coming online. Weapons charging. The sleeping giant of humanity's defense waking up after 6 decades of silence. Cassandra approached him as the room emptied. Dad, just that one word, but it carried everything. Fear, pride, love, determination. Thorn looked at his daughter, saw Sarah in her eyes, saw his mother's stubborn strength in the set of her jaw, saw himself in the way she stood ready to walk into fire because duty demanded it. Your ship, he asked. Ready? Crew is assembled. We can deploy in 2 hours. Good. He wanted to say more, wanted to tell her to be careful, to stay safe, to remember that she was all he had left of Sarah. But those were a father's words, not a commander's. You trained for this your entire life. I know. You're the best stealth commander we have. I know that too. Then trust your training. Trust your crew. He paused. And Cassandra, your mother, would be proud of you. Cassandra's eyes glittered. She'd be proud of you too. You built something impossible. We all did. Every person who sacrificed their future so humanity could have one. He released her hand. Now go make sure it wasn't for nothing. She left. Thorn stood alone in the command center and looked at the holographic display. The solar system spread before him. Every planet, every moon, every asteroid and comet and piece of debris that orbited the sun. Somewhere beyond the edge of that display, moving faster than light, 10,000 warships were coming to end everything humanity had ever built. But here in the dark, beneath mountains that had stood for millions of years, surrounded by weapons that shouldn't exist and warriors who had trained for a war that everyone prayed would never come, Garrett Thorn felt something he hadn't felt in a very long time. Not hope. Hope was too fragile for what was coming. It was certainty. The Dominion was about to learn the same lesson that predators throughout Earth's history had learned the hard way. Thorn pulled Sarah's letter from his pocket one final time. Read her words again. Then he folded it carefully and locked it in his desk drawer. When this was over, if he survived, he would read it again and tell her they had won. And if he didn't survive, someone else would find it and know why they had fought. He turned back to the screens, touched the communication controls. All stations, he said, his voice carrying through every corner of the facility, to every ship, every platform, every weapon system that humanity had built in secret. This is Admiral Thorn. Protocol Prometheus is now active. The enemy arrives in 37 days. We will be ready. We will be waiting. And we will show them that Earth does not kneel. He closed the channel. Outside beyond the mountain, the sun was setting over a world that had no idea its survival hung in the balance. But in the darkness beneath the Himalayas and the hidden bases, scattered across the solar system, in the hearts of men and women who had spent their lives preparing for this moment, a different kind of light was dawning. The light of defiance, the light of readiness, the light of a species that had looked at the void between stars and decided it would not go quietly into extinction. Garrett Thorne watched the screens and waited for war. 37 days became 30. 30 became 20. 20 became 10. The Dominion Harvester fleet traveled through slipspace like a knife, cutting through reality itself. 10,000 warships moving in formations so precise that it looked like a single organism. Commander Draven Kess stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Teeth of Obedience, and felt nothing but confidence. He was a reptilian creature, scales the color of old blood eyes like chips of yellow ice. He had commanded 43 campaigns for the Dominion, conquered 17 species, watched cities burn on 32 worlds. He was 208 years old, and he had never lost. Not once. This harvest would be no different. His communications officer, a young creature named Taith, with large ears and nervous hands, approached with a data tablet. "Commander, we received a transmission 3 weeks ago. Fleet Command forwarded it with orders to assess and disregard." Draven's head turned with reptilian slowness. "Explain." "It came from the target system, from the humans." Taith's voice shook slightly. "On our encrypted military frequency." That got Draven's attention. "That's not possible. That frequency has never been broken. Ever." "I know, sir, but there's more." Taith played the message. The voice that filled the bridge was calm. Too calm. It spoke perfect Dominion, common tongue, with an accent that suggested the speaker had learned it from intercepted transmissions and rather than formal instruction. "Do not come here. You will not harvest us. You will not enslave us. You will simply cease to exist. This is your only warning." Silence settled over the bridge like snow. Draven stared at the communication panel for a long moment. Then he did something he rarely did. He laughed. It was not a pleasant sound. "A bluff. An impressive bluff, I'll grant them. Somehow they intercepted our communications, and they're trying to frighten us." He turned to his tactical officer. "Maintain current course. Increase combat readiness to full. Prepare for drop into normal space in 4 hours." No one argued. No one ever argued with Draven, but the message had done its work. Doubt, small and cold, had crept into the crew, and doubt was a crack in armor that could split a ship in half. The fleet dropped out of the slip space at the edge of the Sol system. 10,000 warships materialized in the darkness between Pluto and Neptune. The formation was beautiful in its precision. 3 spherical shells, each containing thousands of vessels, oriented toward the small blue world that hung in the distance like a jewel. Draven stood at his command station and studied the sensor readings. Nothing. The system was empty. No defense platforms, no orbital weapons, no ships of any kind, just planets and moons and asteroids drifting in their ancient patterns. "Scan complete, Commander," his sensor officer reported. "No artificial structures detected beyond basic satellites and space stations. No military assets. No energy signatures consistent with weapons or shields." Draven's lips pulled back from sharp teeth. As expected, the message was a desperation. They have nothing. He was wrong, but he wouldn't realize it for another 3 minutes. 6,000 feet beneath the Himalayas, Admiral Garrett Thorne watched 10,000 red dots appear on his tactical display like blood drops in water. "They're here," Cross said quietly. Thorne's voice was steady. "Range. Edge of the system. Neptune orbit. They are running full sensor sweeps." "Let them look. They won't see anything until we want them to." Thorne opened a fleet-wide channel. "All assets, this is Thorne. Execute Phase 1. I say again, execute Phase 1. Across the solar system, thousands of sensor platforms that had been sleeping for decades came online simultaneously. The Spectre grid. It was Dr. Ellison Cross's masterpiece. Thousands of microsatellites, each no larger than a basketball, scattered throughout the solar system. Individually, they were nearly invisible. Collectively, they formed the most sophisticated sensor network ever created. And every single one of them was now looking at the Dominion fleet. On the bridge of the Teeth of Obedience, every alarm activated at once. "Commander," the sensor officer's voice cracked, "we're being scanned. All ships reporting the same. It's everywhere. I can't locate the source. It's like the entire system is watching us." Draven gripped the railing of his command platform. "Find it. Find the source and destroy it." "Sir, the scans are coming from everywhere. Thousands of sources. Tens of thousands. They're reading our shield frequencies, our weapon systems, our... The officer stopped. His face went pale. What? Draven demanded. Sir, they just mapped our entire fleet. Every ship, every weapon, every crew member, everything. In under 2 minutes. For the first time in 43 campaigns, Draven felt something cold touch his spine. Fear. Thorn watched the data stream in, every ship identified, every weapon system cataloged, every weakness exposed. Good, he said. Now they know we've been watching. Now they know they walked into something prepared. Cross-activate the cage. Activating now. Across the asteroid belt, thousands of microsatellites that had been hidden among rocks for decades began emitting a resonance frequency. It was a specific pattern carefully designed after years of studying captured Dominion technology. It disrupted one thing and one thing only: slip space drives. On every ship in the Dominion fleet, alarms screamed again. Commander, slip space drives are offline. All of them. We can't generate a window. We can't... The navigation officer looked up with wide eyes. Sir, we're trapped. We can't leave the system. Draven's clawed hand crushed the railing. The metal shrieked. All ship battle formation. We advance. If we can't leave, we destroy them where they stand. The fleet reformed. 10,000 warships turned toward the inner system and began to accelerate. They had traveled for approximately 40 minutes when the second phase began. Launch doors opened across the solar system. From asteroid surfaces, from inside hollowed moons, from platforms that had been disguised as debris. Thousands upon thousands of doors, each one releasing something that had been waiting in darkness. Drones. They came in swarms, billions of them, each one no larger than a bird moving with the coordinated precision of a school of fish. They were not designed to destroy ships. That would come later. They were designed to blind them. The drones targeted sensors, communication arrays, targeting systems, antenna clusters. Anything that allowed the ships to see, to talk, to coordinate. Point defense guns tried to shoot them down. For every drone destroyed, 20 more took its place. Within minutes, the Dominion fleet began to go dark. Ships lost contact with their neighbors. Screens filled with static. Navigation gave false readings. Commanders shouted orders into dead communication channels. Draven watched his carefully organized fleet descend into chaos. The discipline that had won 43 campaigns crumbled like sand. This is impossible, his weapons officer whispered. No Class II species could do this. They don't have the industrial capacity. They don't have the... They're not Class II. Draven's voice was flat, empty. They haven't been Class II for a very long time, and we walked right into their trap. He tried to send a message to Threx Prime, to warn them, to tell the Archon that everything was wrong. The communication systems were dead. The Dominion fleet, blind and scattered, drifted into the inner system, and then the hunters revealed themselves. In the Kuiper Belt, 200 stealth dreadnoughts dropped their cloaking fields simultaneously. To the few Dominion sensors still functioning, it looked like 200 stars had suddenly ignited in the outer dark. Captain Cassandra Thorne stood on the bridge of the EWS Retribution and felt her pulse steady into something cold and mechanical. This was what she had trained for. This was why her father had spent 20 years teaching her how to kill efficiently. All ships, she said into the fleet channel, weapons free. Target priority command, ships carriers, anything with a tactical coordination role. Make every shot count. The human stealth fleet opened fire. The weapons they carried had names that would mean nothing to most of humanity. Kinetic accelerators that fired projectiles at a significant fraction of light speed. Antimatter torpedoes with yields measured in gigatons. Plasma lances that burned hotter than the surface of the sun. Every weapon had been designed with one purpose: to punch through Dominion armor like it was tissue paper. The first volley destroyed 300 ships. The second took 400 more. By the time the Dominion fleet realized where the attack was coming from, over 1,000 ships had been reduced to expanding clouds of debris. Draven managed to get partial communications restored. His voice crackled across the fleet's emergency frequency. All ships return fire. Concentrate on... The teeth of obedience shuddered as a kinetic round punched through its forward shields. The projectile vaporized a weapons battery and sent shrapnel tearing through 3 decks. Draven held on to his command chair as the bridge filled with smoke. Target those ships. I don't care if you can't see them. Fire where they were. Saturate the space with... Another impact. This one tore through the ship's spine. The battle, if it could even be called that, lasted 3 hours. It was surgical, precise. The human fleet had studied Dominion tactics for decades. They knew how the enemy would respond. They knew what formations they would use. They knew everything, and the Dominion knew nothing. Ships died by the hundreds. Commanders tried to organize counterattacks, but their formations had been shattered. Blind ships fired wildly into space, hitting their own vessels as often as the enemy. It was a massacre wearing the skin of a battle. When it was over, 9,400 ships were gone. 600 remained damaged and scattered, trying desperately to find a way out of the system that had become their grave. Thorne watched the tactical display. Red dots vanishing. His daughter's ship moving through the debris field like a ghost. The Dominion fleet broken. Sir, the Cross said quietly, "We've won. The remaining ships are attempting to flee, but the cage is still active. They're trapped." "I know. We can finish them. 600 ships. It would take less than an hour." Thorne was silent for a long moment. He thought of his father taken by people like these. His mother who had died building weapons to stop them. Sarah who had made him promise not to let them take Earth. He had kept that promise. Now came the harder part. "Drop the cage," he said. Cross turned sharply. "What?" "You heard me. Drop the cage. Let them leave." "Sir, they'll report back. They'll tell the Dominion everything. They'll—" "That's exactly what I want them to do." Thorne's voice was quiet but absolute. "I could kill all of them. It would be easy. They're blind, damaged, demoralized. But then what? The Dominion sends another fleet, and another, each one bigger than the last, until they drown us in numbers or we exhaust ourselves." He looked at Cross. "I need them to know what happened here. I need them to know we didn't just survive. We dominated. And I need them to know we chose mercy. Because mercy from a position of strength is more terrifying than slaughter." Cross stared at him. "You're trying to frighten them into not coming back." "No, I'm trying to give them a choice. Come back and face extinction. Or leave us alone and we leave them alone." Thorne's jaw tightened. "I won't become what they are. I won't kill when it's not necessary. Not even to feel safe. That's a risk. Everything is a risk. Drop the cage." The microsatellites powered down. The resonance field collapsed. On the bridge of the Teeth of Obedience, what was left of Draven's crew stared at their consoles in disbelief. "Slip space drives are online," someone whispered. They're letting us go." Draven sat in his ruined command chair. Blood ran down his face from a gash on his forehead. Around him, his bridge crew, the ones who had survived, looked at him with eyes that held nothing but shock. He opened a communication channel. His voice was raw. "This is Commander Draven Kess to all surviving vessels. Retreat. Jump to slip space immediately. Emergency protocols. Go. Now." Ships began to vanish, jumping to faster-than-light travel, fleeing the system that had destroyed them. Draven prepared his own ship for the jump, but before he left, he sent one final transmission. Not to his fleet, to the humans. "You could have killed us all. Why didn't you?" The response came 60 seconds later, a voice he recognized from the warning message. The same calm, the same absolute certainty. "Because we're not monsters. Go home, Commander. Tell your masters what happened here. Tell them we were merciful today. Tell them not to make us be anything else." The Teeth of Obedience jumped to slip space. 600 ships followed. Behind them, the wreckage of 9,400 vessels drifted in the dark. A graveyard. A warning. A message written in shattered metal and frozen blood. Earth had spoken, and the galaxy had heard. On Station Orin 4, Marin Caldwell sat in a cantina that smelled like recycled air and alien sweat and watched the footage play on every screen. Someone had recorded the battle. The Watcher Network, probably. A collective of enslaved species who monitored Dominion activities and shared information through channels the Empire didn't know existed. The recording was grainy, pieced together from salvaged sensor data, but it was enough. It showed Dominion warships burning. It showed a fleet of 10,000 reduced to 600 in 3 hours. It showed the most powerful military force in the galaxy breaking like glass against a species no one had heard of. The cantina was packed. Aliens of a dozen conquered species crowded around the screens, watching in absolute silence. When the footage ended, no one spoke for a long time. Then a Wrathminer, a stone-skinned giant with scars on his arms, stood up. His voice was like an earthquake. "They did it. Someone finally did it." The cantina erupted. Marin watched aliens who had lived under Dominion rule for centuries talk to each other with something she hadn't seen in 11 years of deep cover. Hope. She left the cantina and made her way through the station's lower levels to a private communication room, locked the door, activated the scrambler that would make this conversation impossible to trace. 14 faces appeared on her screen, representatives from 14 different conquered species. Some she had been cultivating relationships with for years. Others were news contacts reached out after the human warning message spread. She had called this meeting in secret 3 weeks ago. Now she was about to make it public. "You saw the footage," she said. No preamble, no diplomacy. A Pelowese female aquatic species with bioluminescent skin spoke first. "The Dominion has ruled our world for 600 years. In all that time, no one has stood against them. Now we watch a species we never heard of destroy 10,000 ships in 3 hours. "Not just destroy them," rumbled Karn. The massive wrath filled his screen. "Humiliate them. The humans didn't just win. They made it look easy. And then they let survivors go," added a Sereth, a winged creature with feathers like bronze. "That's the part I can't understand." Why? Marin had been thinking about that for hours. Because they wanted the Dominion to know they chose mercy, that they're not conquerors, they're defenders. "Noble," said a Hurix, a crystalline being who spoke in chimes. "But naive. The Dominion will come back, with more ships, more weapons." "I know," Marin leaned forward, "which is why I'm here. The humans didn't fight that battle for you. They fought because the Dominion came for them. But the Dominion is coming back. And when they do, Earth can't fight alone." Karn's eyes narrowed. "What are you proposing?" "An alliance, not servitude. Not a new empire to replace the old one. A coalition of free species who fight together because they choose to, not because they're forced to." Silence. Then Karn spoke again. "And what do the humans offer? Technology, training, weapons, everything they used to destroy that fleet." Marin pulled up schematics, shield generators, drone swarms, communication systems decades ahead of anything the Dominion gave their slaves. "They're willing to share." "In exchange for what?" The Pelowese female sounded suspicious. "What do they want from us?" "Nothing except that if you choose to fight, they'll stand beside you." Marin's voice was steady. "Look, I've lived among you for 11 years. I've seen what the Dominion does. How they break species and turn them against each other. How they make you believe you're weak and worthless. The humans are offering you a chance to prove that's a lie." "Pretty speech," the Hurix chimed, "but we've heard promises before." "Then don't listen to my words. Watch what they did." Marin played the footage again. Ships burning, a fleet destroyed, and at the end survivors allowed to flee. "That's not the behavior of conquerors. That's the behavior of people who understand the difference between strength and cruelty." Karn was the first to speak. "My people have waited 800 years for a sign that the Dominion can bleed. The humans have given us that sign." His massive fist clenched. "The wrath will fight." One by one the others agreed, not easily. There were arguments, suspicions, old hatreds between species that had been turned against each other by their masters. But slowly, carefully, the alliance formed. 14 species, billions of beings, all of them agreeing to stand together for the first time in living memory. When the meeting ended, Marin sat alone in the communication room and allowed herself a moment of grief for Thomas. Her husband would have loved this, would have seen it as vindication of everything he had died for. She touched the ring she still wore on a chain around her neck. "We did it, love. Your death meant something. I promise." Then she composed a message to Admiral Thorne and sent it through every encrypted channel she had. The Alliance was ready, 6,000 light-years away in the council chambers of Threx Prime Archon. Vexmorian watched the same footage Marin had seen and felt his world crumbling. He was ancient even by Dominion standards, over 3,000 years old. He had ruled the Galactic Dominion Council for most of that time. He had crushed rebellions, silenced dissent, buried entire species in the dust of history. He had never not once lost a fleet, until today. The chamber around him was chaos, counselors shouting at each other, hardliners demanding blood, moderates urging caution. Everyone terrified but too proud to admit it. Vex raised one long arm. The chamber fell silent. "Enough!" His voice cut through the noise like a blade. "The humans surprised us, I acknowledge this. They used deception and preparation to destroy a single fleet. This is not a defeat. It is a lesson. A lesson that cost us 10,000 ships, someone shouted. A reminder that we've grown complacent, that we assumed all species would simply kneel." Vex's 4 black eyes swept the chamber. "We will respond with appropriate force. Assemble the Grand Armada, every warship, every carrier, every weapon platform in the Dominion, 200,000 ships. The chamber erupted in approval. We will go to Earth, not to conquer it, but to erase it. Every city, every structure, every living thing on that planet will be turned to ash, and the galaxy will watch. This moment of false hope will be crushed. The counselors cheered, but in the back of the chamber, one figure did not join the celebration. Counselor Nara stood perfectly still and watched Vex with eyes the color of old silver. She was a Sylvari, though few remembered her species anymore. They had been absorbed into the Dominion 500 years ago. Peacefully integrated, the official history said. The truth was darker. Nara had been a princess once. Her family had refused to surrender, so the Dominion had executed them publicly. She had survived by hiding her identity, working her way into the system from within, spending 4 centuries waiting for a chance to destroy it. She had been patient, patient enough to become a counselor, patient enough to earn enough trust to access the highest levels of intelligence. And now, watching Vex order the destruction of an entire species simply to save face, she realized the chance had come. That night in her private quarters, she accessed files that only counselors could see. Deployment schedules, fleet routes, supply lines, command structures, everything about the Grand Armada that was being assembled. She copied it all to an encrypted data core. Then, through a chain of intermediaries so complex that it could never be traced back to her, she sent it to Agent Marin Caldwell. The file included a single note: they're sending everything. Make it count. When Thorne received the intelligence 12 hours later, he studied it for a full day without sleeping. Cross found him in his office staring at star maps and deployment schedules. Garrett, you need to rest. Can't. Look at this. Thorne highlighted the routes the Grand Armada would take. They're pulling every ship from every sector, every garrison, every patrol. They're concentrating everything for one massive strike. 200,000 ships. Cross's voice was hollow. Even with everything we have, the numbers, I know. Thorne zoomed out on the map. Behind the advancing armada, hundreds of worlds lit up in different colors. Conquered species, slave populations, lightly defended because all the military assets were being pulled to the front. But look what they're leaving behind. Cross studied the map. Understanding dawned slowly. They're leaving their empire exposed. Completely exposed. If someone hit them from behind while they're concentrated here, the entire system collapses. Cross straightened. You want to coordinate with the Alliance. Let them strike the Dominion's rear while we hold Earth. Not just strike, liberate. Every slave world, every garrison, every supply depot. The Dominion has spent 11,000 years building an empire on the backs of conquered species. They forgot something important about slaves. What? Thorne's smile was cold. They outnumber their masters. He opened a communication channel to Marin. The conversation lasted 3 hours. When it ended, the strategy was set. Earth would face the Armada, the Alliance would rise behind them, and the Dominion would burn from within. But first, Thorne had to have a conversation he'd been dreading. He found Cassandra in the Retribution's ready room, reviewing battle footage with her senior officers. When she saw him, she dismissed them. Dad? He hated when she called him that on duty. It reminded him she was his daughter, first his officer second, and what he was about to ask her required him to remember the opposite. I need the Retribution on the front line when the Armada arrives. She nodded. Expected. We're the best stealth ship in the fleet. You'll be facing impossible odds. 200,000 ships against 12,000. Even with Allied support, even with everything we've built. He stopped. Started again. This isn't like the first battle. They'll be prepared. They'll be angry. And they'll be willing to lose ships just to make sure we all die. I know. Cassandra, I'm trying to tell you that I might not come home. She met his eyes. I know, Dad. I've always known. Mom knew too. Grandma knew. Every person in the Void Wardens knows that some of us might not survive this. But we do it anyway because the alternative is letting them win. Thorne felt something crack in his chest. Your mother would tell me not to let you do this. No, she'd tell you to trust my training. To trust that you raised me right. To trust that I understand what I'm fighting for. Cassandra stood, walked to him, took his hands in hers. I'm not doing this because you ordered me to. I'm doing it because it's right, because if I don't, children won't have a world to grow up in. He stared at her. Children, plural. Her smile was gentle. You're already a grandfather, Dad. I have a son. He's 3 years old. I didn't tell you because I wanted to wait until this was over. Until I knew he'd have a future worth living in. Thorn felt the world tilt. His voice came out as a whisper. I have a grandson. His name is Julian. After your father, he's with Sarah's sister in New Zealand. Safe. Hidden. Just like we planned. She squeezed his hands. And I'm pregnant again. 4 months. I need you to know that whatever happens out there, part of me survived. Part of us. Thorn pulled her into a hug, held her the way he had when she was small and frightened of thunder. Come home, he whispered. That's an order. Yes, sir. He released her, stepped back. Commander and Admiral again. Deploy to the Kuiper Belt. Maximum stealth. When they arrive, wait for my signal. She saluted. Understood. He watched her leave. Then he returned to his office and pulled out Sarah's letter one more time. You were right, he told the paper, the memory, the ghost. Our daughter is extraordinary, just like you. And we have a grandson named Julian, and another grandchild on the way. You would have loved them. He folded the letter, locked it away. Then he activated the fleet-wide channel. All stations, this is Admiral Thorn. The enemy is coming. 200,000 ships. They think numbers will save them. They're wrong. Hold your positions. Trust your training. And remember, we're not fighting for conquest. We're fighting for the simple right to exist. Thorn out. Deep in the archives of Threx Prime Scribe, Lyra watched the preparations for the Grand Armada and felt sick. She had tried everything, sent warnings to fleet commanders, filed reports, even attempted to contact Counselor Nara directly. Everything had been blocked. Every attempt is shut down by Vex's office. She sat alone in her archive room, surrounded by the records of 1,000 dead civilizations, and realized she was watching history repeat itself. The Dominion had faced apex predator species twice before. Both times they had ignored early warnings. Both times they had committed overwhelming force. Both times they had won, but at a cost that nearly broke them. The humans were the third, and this time Lyra suspected the Dominion wouldn't survive the victory. She couldn't stop what was coming, but she could document it, ensure that when the Empire fell and she believed now it would fall, someone would know the truth. She began writing, a complete record, everything she had found, every warning that had been ignored, every decision that had led to this moment. It would be her testimony, her witness statement for whatever came after. And if she died when the Empire collapsed, at least the truth would survive. Across the galaxy on 100 worlds in 1,000 secret meetings, conquered species prepared to do something they hadn't done in living memory. Fight back. Karn stood before his resistance leaders on Wrath Prime. 20 years of secret preparation. 20 years of stockpiling weapons and training warriors and waiting for a moment that might never come. The moment had arrived. We have weapons now, he told them. Crates of human technology. Rifles that could punch through Dominion armor. Shields that could stop plasma bolts. Communication devices that couldn't be jammed. And we have something more valuable. We have hope. He showed them the footage, the Dominion fleet burning. For 800 years they told us we were weak, that resistance was futile, that we existed to serve. His voice was stone grinding stone. The humans proved that was a lie. And when the Dominion sends their armada to Earth, when every ship is pulled away from our world, we're going to remind them of something they forgot. What? Asked Thera. Karn's smile showed teeth like granite. That slaves have been sharpening knives in the dark, and we remember how to use them. The preparations continued. On Earth, hidden fleets moved to their positions. Weapon systems charged. The Soulfire array buried deep in the sun itself ran final checks. On allied worlds, resistance cells prepared to rise. Weapons were distributed. Targets were identified. Strike teams rehearsed their attacks. And on Threx Prime, the Grand Armada assembled like a storm gathering on the horizon. 200,000 warships, the largest military force ever assembled in galactic history, built for one purpose: to erase Earth from existence. Thorn watched it all from his command center, saw the armada forming, saw the allied worlds preparing, saw his daughter's ship taking position in the darkness. Cross appeared at his shoulder. It's really happening. It's all coming to this. Yes. Are you afraid? Thorn thought about his father taken by the Dominion, his mother who died building the shield, his wife who made him promise to finish it, his daughter carrying his grandchild into battle, his grandson 3 years old who would never know his great-grandfather but would live in the world they built. Terrified, he admitted, but fear is just another weapon, and I've learned how to use all of them. He looked at the tactical display, at Earth small and blue and impossibly fragile, at the armada vast and terrible moving through the dark. They're coming to harvest us, Thorn said quietly, We're going to show them what happens when you threaten someone's grandchildren. The Armada jumped to slip space. Then the war would begin. The Grand Armada dropped out of the slip space at the edge of the Sol system like a darkness swallowing stars. 200,000 warships. The formation stretched across millions of kilometers. Each vessel a cathedral of metal and violence. Each one carrying enough firepower to level a continent. Together they formed the largest military force ever assembled in galactic history, built for one purpose: erasure. Admiral Garrett Thorne stood in his command center beneath the Himalayas and watched the red markers bloom across his tactical display like blood and water. So many that they merged into solid clouds. So many that counting them individually was meaningless. Mother of God, someone whispered behind him. Thorne's voice was steady. All stations, this is Thorne. The enemy has arrived. Execute defensive protocols. Hold your positions. Make every shot count. Across the solar system, weapons platforms powered up. Drone factories opened their bays. Ships that had been hiding in darkness for weeks charged their systems. And deep inside the sun, the Soulfire array began its startup sequence. Cross appeared at Thorne's shoulder. The cryptographer's hands were shaking. In 42 years of friendship, Thorne had never seen him truly afraid. Until now. Garrett, the numbers. Even with everything we have, even with the Alliance. I know. Thorne's eyes never left the display. 200,000 against 12,000. The math doesn't work. It never did. Then how? We don't need to destroy them all. We need to break their will to fight. And we need to survive long enough for the Alliance to tear their empire apart from behind. He touched the communication controls. Cassandra status. His daughter's voice came through clear and calm from the Retribution hidden in the Kuiper Belt with the rest of the stealth fleet. Ready, Dad. All ships report full combat capability. Good. Wait for my signal. Don't engage until they're committed. Understood. He wanted to say more, wanted to tell her he loved her, that she was everything Sarah had hoped she'd be, that he was proud beyond words, that he wanted to meet his grandson Julian, that he needed her to survive so the baby she carried would know its mother. But there were 600 officers in the command center listening, and she deserved better than a commander who let sentiment cloud his judgment. Thorne out. The Armada began to move. It came as a wave, precise, inexorable, the kind of force that civilization saw once before they stopped existing. Arshan Vex Morian watched from his flagship the Will of Dominion and felt satisfaction cold and absolute. This was how it should be. This was the natural order. The strong crushing the weak, the Empire demonstrating why resistance was futile. Advance, he commanded. All ships standard conquest formation. Destroy everything in this system. Leave nothing that could be rebuilt. I want this species erased so completely that in 1,000 years, no one will remember they existed. The fleet accelerated toward the inner system. They hit the cage first. The microsatellites activated simultaneously. The resonance field snapped into place like a trap closing. On every ship in the Armada, slip space drives went offline. Vex's communications officer looked up with wide eyes. Archon, we're locked in. We can't retreat. Good. Vex's smile showed too many teeth. Neither can they. Continue the advance. 30 minutes later, the weapon platforms that had been disguised as asteroids opened fire. Thousands of them scattered throughout the belt. Kinetic rounds traveling at orbital velocities. Plasma bolts hot enough to melt steel. Missiles with nuclear warheads that had been illegal for 200 years. The leading edge of the Armada erupted in fire. Ships died by the hundreds, then by the thousands. The platforms were small, hard to target, and there were too many of them to suppress quickly. Thorne watched the tactical display with cold precision. Cross-casualty estimate. 3,000 enemy ships destroyed. Minimal damage to our platforms. Cross's voice held something like hope. Garrett, they're breaking apart. The formations they're adapting, watch. The Armada shifted. Ships with heavy armor moved to the front, absorbing fire, while lighter vessels maneuvered behind them. Point defense systems coordinated across entire battle groups, creating overlapping fields of fire that swept space clean of incoming ordnance. The casualty rate dropped. The advance continued. They learned fast, Cross said quietly. They've had 11,000 years of practice. Thorne opened the fleet channel. Will drone platforms execute attack pattern Delta? The swarms launched again. Billions of autonomous hunters, each one programmed with a single directive: blind the enemy. But this time the Dominion was ready. Their point defense had adapted. Ships flew in tight formations, shields overlapping. The drones died by the millions before they could reach their targets. Some got through, enough to cause chaos, enough to disrupt coordination, but not enough to stop the Armada. 197,000 ships pushed into the inner system. Signal the Alliance, Thorne said. Tell them to execute. Across the galaxy on 100 worlds that had lived in chains for centuries, resistance cells struck simultaneously. On Wrath Prime, Karn led 10,000 warriors out of the deep tunnels and into the Dominion garrison compound. They came in darkness armed with weapons that shouldn't exist, moving with coordination that years of secret training had honed to perfection. The garrison had 300 soldiers. They had grown comfortable, lazy. They expected slaves to kneel, not to fight. Karn's forces hit them like an avalanche. The battle for the compound lasted 20 minutes. When it was over, the Dominion flag was burning, and Karn stood on the communications tower, broadcasting a message that reached every slave world in 100 light years. We are free. The Dominion is vulnerable. Rise now. Fight now. This is our only chance. On Peloise, aquatic warriors emerged from the deep oceans and overwhelmed the surface processing facilities. On Sarith, winged fighters dropped from the clouds and took control of the planetary defense grid. On world after world after world, the enslaved became the liberators. The Dominion's rear collapsed like a house of cards. But in the Sol system, the Armada kept coming. 12,000 ships materialized from the darkness to meet them. Human stealth dreadnoughts, yes, but also vessels from 14 allied species. Crude compared to Dominion technology. Built in secret over decades from stolen materials and improvised designs. Ships that shouldn't have been able to challenge the Empire's might. But they were crewed by beings who had nothing left to lose and everything to prove. Cassandra Thorne led the formation in the Retribution. Her voice on the fleet channel was calm, precise, carrying the weight of 20 years of training. All ships engage at will. Target priority command vessels and carriers. Coordinated strikes on my mark. The combined fleet opened fire. The battle became chaos. Human ships struck from stealth, appearing long enough to fire devastating volleys before vanishing again. Allied vessels fought with desperate courage, throwing themselves at targets 10 times their size. The Dominion responded with overwhelming force. Their ships were better armed, better armored, more numerous. They should have swept the defenders aside like dust. But the defenders had something the Dominion didn't understand. They were fighting for freedom, not for conquest, not for territory. For the simple right to exist without chains. That made all the difference. Karn's flagship, the Unbroken, was a captured Dominion cruiser that his people had rebuilt over 20 years. It was ugly, asymmetrical, patched together from scrap and hope. But it was theirs. He led a squadron of Wrath warships straight into the heart of a Dominion battle group. His tactical officer, Thera, looked at him with eyes wide. Karn, we're outnumbered 8-1. If we engage, we won't survive. I know. His voice was stone grinding stone. The same voice he'd used when his son died, when he'd started the resistance, when he'd made the choice to fight even though fighting meant dying. But we'll take enough of them with us that it matters. For the Wrath, Thera said quietly, for everyone who never got to be free. The Unbroken accelerated to ramming speed. Thorne watched through the tactical feed, watched Karn's ship charge straight at a Dominion command carrier, watched point defense fire tear through the Unbroken's armor, watched the stone-skinned giant on the bridge standing tall, even as his ship fell apart around him. He's not going to make it, Cross whispered. Yes, he is. Watch. The Unbroken hit the carrier at full velocity. The collision tore both ships in half. The carrier's command network died instantly, throwing its entire battle group into confusion. Human stealth ships swept through the disorganized formation and destroyed it in minutes. Escape pods detected, the tactical officer reported. Multiple signatures, Wrath life signs, Karn survived. Thorne allowed himself the smallest smile. Good, he earned it. But the victory was local. Across the system, the Armada pressed forward. 12,000 ships against 194,000. The numbers were still impossible. Ships died on both sides. Human, Allied, Dominion. The void filled with debris and frozen bodies and the wreckage of civilization's dreams. And then the core fleet broke through. 50,000 Dominion warships, the elite of the Armada, punched through the defensive lines and accelerated toward Earth. Leading them was Commander Draven Kess. Vex had given him one final chance, not because the Archon trusted him, but because Draven was the only commander who had seen the humans fight and survived. Better a pessimist who knew the enemy than an optimist who would die blind. Draven had learned from the first battle, His ships flew in coordinated groups. Their sensors swept constantly for cloaked vessels. Their point defense was perfect, and they were heading straight for the blue world that hung in the distance like a promise. Thorne's tactical officer looked up, face pale. "Sir, we can't stop them. Not all of them. Some will get through." "I know." Thorne's hand hovered over the control that would activate the final weapon, the one he'd hoped he wouldn't have to use. "Cross status on the Soulfire array. Charged and ready. Relay stations aligned. We can fire on your command." Cross's voice dropped. "Garrett, the blast radius. If we fire now, any ship within 10 million kilometers." "I know." Thorne looked at the tactical display, at the 50,000 ships bearing down on Earth, at the Retribution positioned perfectly to intercept them, but directly in the firing solution for the solar weapon. At his daughter commanding the ship that was about to be in the worst possible place at the worst possible time. His hand trembled over the control. "Sir," the tactical officer said quietly, "we need to fire. If they reach Earth..." "Give me 1 minute." Thorne opened a private channel. "Cassandra, this is Dad. I need you to pull back. Now, emergency protocols. Get clear of the intercept zone." Silence for 3 seconds. Then her voice calm and absolutely certain. "Negative. If I pull back, they reach Earth unopposed. I can buy you time." "That's an order, Captain." "With respect, sir, that's an order I can't follow. Not when it means abandoning my post." Her voice softened. "Dad, you taught me this. Duty before safety, mission before self. You taught me what matters." "Cassandra, I know what you're going to do. I know where the Retribution is positioned. And I know you need to fire." Something that might have been a smile in her voice. "So I'm going to make sure you have a clear shot." "Baby girl, please." "I love you, Dad. Tell Julian about what we did here. Tell him his mother fought so he could be free. Tell the baby I'm carrying..." Her voice caught. "Tell them both their mother loved them." "Cassandra, where?" "Retribution here to all ships in intercept group. Follow my lead. We're going to give the Admiral his opening." Thorne watched helpless as his daughter's ship accelerated straight toward Draven's flagship. The Retribution was a stealth dreadnought, built for hit-and-run attacks, surgical strikes, not for head-on assaults against capital ships. But Cassandra had been her grandmother's descendant, her mother's daughter, and she had learned from her father that some things were worth dying for. The Retribution dropped its cloak and opened fire at point-blank range. Antimatter torpedoes tore through Draven's shields. Kinetic rounds punched through armor. The flagship staggered. Then Cassandra did something that made Cross cry out in horror. She rammed. The Retribution hit Draven's flagship at full combat speed. The collision was catastrophic. Both ships broke apart. Debris scattered across 100,000 kilometers. Secondary explosions tore through Draven's battle group. On the dying bridge of his flagship, Draven watched the view screen crack and the stars spin. He had spent 200 years conquering. It had taken one species 3 hours to teach him what conquest truly cost. "They deserve their freedom," he said to no one as fire consumed his bridge. And in the chaos, a gap opened in the Dominion formation. A clear firing solution straight to the heart of the fleet. Thorne's vision blurred. His hand moved to the control as if in a dream. He heard his own voice, distant and hollow, give the order. "Fire." Deep inside the sun, the stellar energy taps activated. The relay stations aligned, drew energy from the sun's core, concentrated it, focused it, released it in beams of pure stellar plasma. The temperature of the sun's heart moving at the speed of light. The beams lanced across the solar system. Pure white, pure death, beautiful and terrible. They touched the Dominion fleet. Ships didn't explode. They vaporized. Metal turned to gum, crew turned to atoms. Shields meant nothing. Armor meant nothing. 50,000 warships vanished in seconds, reduced to expanding clouds of superheated particles. The void screamed, and in the silence after, Thorne sat in his command chair and stared at the tactical display, at the space where his daughter's ship had been, where nothing remained but debris and fading energy signatures. Cross put a hand on his shoulder. "Garrett, I'm so sorry. The tactical officer's voice cut through. "Sir, emergency beacon detected escape pod. Signature matches Retribution command section." Thorne's head snapped up. "Confirm. Confirmed life signs detected. Captain Thorne is alive." Thorne was on his feet before he knew he was moving. "Get a recovery shuttle, now. I don't care what's happening with the battle. Get my daughter." "Already dispatched, sir." He sank back into his chair. His hands were shaking. His vision swam. 64 years old, and he felt every day of it. But Cassandra was alive. and so was his grandson Julian, and so was the baby she carried. Across the system, what remained of the Dominion Armada broke. 140,000 ships had entered the Sol system. Less than 20,000 remained combat capable. They had watched half their fleet vanish in an instant, watched a species they'd come to harvest turn a star into a weapon. On the bridge of the will of Dominion, Vex stared at his screens and understood finally and completely that he had lost. Not just the battle, everything. His empire was collapsing behind him. Slave worlds rising, supply lines cut, garrisons overwhelmed. And here in this insignificant system on the edge of nowhere, a species he'd dismissed as Class II primitives had destroyed the greatest military force in galactic history. "Retreat," he said quietly. His officers stared at him. "Retreat," his voice cracked. "All ships emergency jump. Get us out of this system." The Armada fled, ships jumping to slip space as fast as their drives could charge. Some made it, some didn't. The human fleet pursued, cutting down stragglers. But Thorn called off the pursuit after 10 minutes. "Let them go. We've made our point." On Threx Prime, the news spread like fire. The Armada defeated, the fleet scattered, slave worlds in open revolt, supply lines cut, the Empire hemorrhaging. Riots erupted in the streets of the capital. People who had lived under the Dominion's rule for centuries suddenly realized the unthinkable had happened. The Empire was falling. In the archive chambers, Scribe Lyra listened to the chaos outside and made a decision that should have been impossible for someone like her. Someone small, someone powerless, someone who had survived by staying quiet. She walked to the council chambers. The halls were empty. The guards had fled. The bureaucrats who had enforced the Empire's will for millennia had scattered like rats. She found Vex alone in the grand chamber. The lights were failing. Emergency power couldn't sustain the entire complex. Darkness crept in from the edges. He sat in his command throne, surrounded by screens, showing worlds breaking free. 800 years of conquest unraveling in days. Lyra stood in the doorway. This creature had destroyed her species, had killed her parents, had spent 11,000 years grinding civilizations to dust, and now he was alone, powerless, broken. "You were warned," she said. Vex turned his 4 black eyes toward her, recognized her after a moment. "Scribe Lyra, come to gloat." "No, I came to witness. Someone needs to see this. Someone needs to remember that you had a choice, that you could have avoided all of this." She held up a data core. "I found the original survey report, the one you buried 200 years ago, the one that said to leave the humans alone." Vex was silent for a long time. Then he laughed. It was a terrible sound. "Would it have mattered if I had listened? Some other Archon would have sent a fleet eventually. Humanity would have prepared. This was always going to happen. Perhaps, but it didn't have to be you who started it. It didn't have to be you who destroyed the Dominion." She turned to leave. "I'm going to make sure history knows the truth, that you knew, that you chose this." She walked out, and in another part of the crumbling palace, Counselor Nara was already broadcasting. Her message went out on every frequency the Dominion controlled. She revealed herself as the insider who had leaked the Armada's plans, explained exactly how the Empire had fallen, called for a transitional government based on consent rather than conquest. The response was overwhelming. Species that had been enemies for centuries turned against each other by their masters began to talk, to negotiate, to imagine something different. Lyra found Nara in the broadcast center. The 2 women looked at each other, one who had documented the truth, one who had acted on it. "It's over," Lyra said. "No," Nara smiled. "It's beginning." The Free Systems Accord formed in the ruins of the Empire, and at its first gathering, held on a neutral station in unclaimed space, representatives from 200 species waited to hear from the humans. Garrett Thorne stood before them. He was tired, the kind of tired that sleep couldn't fix. He had retrieved his daughter from the debris field, held her while she cried, promised her that Julian would know what she'd done, and he had spent 2 days ensuring the surviving Dominion forces left the Sol system completely. Now he faced beings from across the galaxy and tried to find words for what came next. "We didn't fight this war for you," he began. "We fought because the Dominion came for us, because they marked us for harvest, and we refused to kneel. What happened after the Alliance, the uprising, the liberation that was you, your courage, your sacrifice, your choice to stand?" He paused. "Now comes the hard part. Building something new, something that doesn't repeat the mistakes of what came before, And I want to be very clear about Earth's role in that. The chamber was silent. We will not rule you. We will not lead you. We will not make decisions for you or claim authority over you. What we will do is stand beside you, share what we've learned, help where we're asked, and defend any of you who face the kind of threat we just defeated. He met eyes around the room. Beings of a dozen species, some who had fought beside humanity, some who had watched from afar, all of them waiting to see if humanity would become a new empire. We're neighbors, Thorn said simply. Nothing more, nothing less. And if you'll have us, we'd like to help you build something where neighbors don't need to fear each other, where strength means protecting the weak instead of exploiting them, where we stand together by choice, not force. The applause started small, then built. Not everyone joined. Some species were too scarred by centuries of oppression to trust anyone claiming benevolence. But most did. The Free Systems Accord was founded that day, a coalition of equals, no central authority, no single species in control, just neighbors helping each other survive. On Station Orn 4, Agent Marin Caldwell, no longer in hiding, no longer pretending, stood before the Accord's inaugural session and felt Thomas's ring warm against her chest. 11 years of lies had ended. The galaxy knew who she was now. Earth's first official ambassador to the Free Systems, and she would spend the rest of her life building what her husband had died to protect. 3 years later, Garrett Thorne sat on the porch of a cabin in the Montana mountains and watched his grandson chase butterflies. Julian was 6 years old now, dark hair like his mother, pale eyes like his grandfather. He laughed with the kind of joy that only children possess, unaware that 3 years ago his mother had rammed her ship into an enemy flagship to save his world. Cassandra sat beside Thorne, her hand resting on the shoulder of her daughter. Elena was 2 years old, named after Thorne's mother Miriam, and Sarah both, but they called her Ellie. She had survived being born in a military hospital while her mother recovered from injuries that should have killed her. "He looks like Sarah," Cassandra said quietly. "He does." Thorne smiled. She would have loved them both. She would have loved all of this, the peace, the alliance, the fact that we didn't become what we fought against. Your grandmother would be proud too. Thorne watched Julian run, watched Ellie toddle after him on unsteady legs. 3 generations. Your grandmother fought to prepare. Your mother fought to support. You fought to win. Maybe they'll be the first Thorns who don't have to fight at all. Maybe. Cassandra squeezed his hand. You did good, Dad. You saved the world. The galaxy, actually. We saved it, all of us. The sun began to set over the mountains. Julian, tired of chasing butterflies, and climbed into his grandfather's lap. Ellie followed, curling up against her mother. "Grandpa, tell me a story," Julian said. Thorne held the child, felt the weight of him, the warmth, the promise of a future that decades of preparation had made possible. "What kind of story?" "A story about space, about big ships and battles." Cassandra laughed. "Maybe something less violent." "How about a story about neighbors?" Thorne said. "About people who were different from each other but learned to stand together." "Okay." As the sun set, painting the sky in colors that Earth would continue to see because humanity had refused to kneel, Garrett, Thorne told his grandchildren about the day the galaxy learned an important lesson. That power is not the fist that strikes, it is the hand that refuses to kneel, and the wisdom to extend that hand in friendship when the fighting is done. The story ended. The children fell asleep. The stars came out over Montana brighter than they'd been in years because the cities below had learned to dim their lights, to let the universe show itself. Thorne sat with his sleeping grandchildren and his daughter and watched those stars. Somewhere among them, 200 species were building something new, learning to trust, learning to hope, learning to be neighbors. And on Earth, in the mountains where it had all begun, an old warrior held his family close and finally, after everything, allowed himself to rest. The void would always hold threats. New enemies would arise. Challenges would come. But for tonight, under the stars that had nearly seen humanity's extinction, there was peace. And that was enough. Garrett Thorne closed his eyes and felt Sarah's presence in the mountain wind, felt his mother's pride in the grandchildren who carried their legacy, felt his father's spirit finally at rest knowing his son had finished what should never have been necessary to start. "We did it," he whispered to ghosts and memories and the future sleeping in his arms. "We survived. We stayed human. We refused to become monsters to defeat monsters." The wind carried his words away, and in the silence after, beneath stars that would shine on free worlds for generations to come, the last guardian of Earth finally laid down his burden. The war was over, the neighbors had won, and the galaxy would never be the same.